11, Moana Mackey.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My question is to the Minister of Housing and asks, how much is in Budget 2010 for the acquisition of new state-owned houses, and how does that compare to the $48 million in Budget 2007 for state house acquisitions?
The Honourable Phil Heatley.
Mr Speaker, Housing New Zealand has budgeted $74 million of its own income to build 241 new properties and purchase a further 96 properties. It has also budgeted an additional $40 million to lease 455 new properties. The national government hasn't got a particular appropriation for that, but Housing New Zealand is also, or the government is also investing in $5.8 million worth of community group houses. So that will help community groups house people who have particular complex needs.
Order. I didn't hear the answer to the second part of the question about the comparison with Budget 2007.
Well, Mr Speaker, in the question it gave the figure for 2007, and I gave the two figures for the current government.
Well, I'll let the member asking the question follow it up. Moana Mackey.
Can he confirm that of the $18 million in Budget 2010 for acquisition and improvement of state houses, $6.5 million is for Housing New Zealand's energy efficiency program, $5.7 million is for healthy housing, a reduction of more than $9 million, and $5.8 million is for community group housing, leaving precisely $0 for new houses?
The Honourable Phil Heatley.
Well, Mr Speaker, I think I made it crystal clear that in the financial year she's talking about, Housing New Zealand is going to build 241 new properties, purchase a further 96 properties and lease 405 new properties. Just because it doesn't come from the government but comes from Housing New Zealand's annual billion-dollar rental income makes no difference to all those hundreds of families that are going to be housed.
Moana Mackey.
Does he remember criticising Labour for funding a net increase of, quote, only 475 state houses in 2008? And will he retract that criticism, given that he has announced that he will, quote, slow down and probably stop, unquote, building the government's housing stock?
The Honourable Phil Heatley.
Mr Speaker, I remember rightly criticising Labour for a lot of things.
Supplementary question, Moana Mackey.
Has he seen the report from First National released today outlining a severe shortage of rental properties, the report from his own housing advisory group pointing to a current housing shortage of 70,000 homes which is set to worsen, and the report from Genuine Homes released yesterday saying that home builders are suffering because the building sector has never been this quiet? And if so, why is he the only person who thinks now is the right time for the government to stop investing in housing?
The Honourable Phil Heatley.
Mr Speaker, I released a report saying we have a shortage in housing, so clearly I'm well aware of that. It's just I don't believe that the government is the one that has to run out and build them all. What we'd like to do is work with community group organisations across the country and resource them to build and buy and lease houses to house more people that are struggling, like families struggling on the waiting list.
Chester Borrows.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My question is to the Minister and asks, how does the $100 million provided by the government in February 2009 for upgrades of state houses compare to funding for upgrades in Budget 2007-2008?
The Honourable Phil Heatley.
Oh, Mr Speaker, this is fascinating. The national government invested $109 million on more than 13,000 upgrades of old, cold and mouldy houses. This grand $109 million total compares to $7.5 million by the Labour government. In other words, the Labour government invested only 10% of what National did that year. And do you know why this is, Mr Speaker? It's because the National Party and John Key believe that the quality of housing for our tenants is just as important as the quantity of housing for our tenants. Otherwise, we'd house them in dog kennels like the previous government did.
Moana Mackey. Order. I've called Moana Mackey.
How many people could have been housed with the $1.6 billion being spent on the Puhoi to Wellsford Holiday Highway, now known as the Stephen Joyce Road of Personal Significance?
The Honourable Phil Heatley.
Mr Speaker, at this time, although it's way at the top of my list, I haven't done that calculation.
Chester Borrows.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My question is to the Minister. What has been the result of this additional $109 million?
The Honourable Phil Heatley.
Well, Mr Speaker, in 2009-10, more than 25,000 upgrades of state houses were carried out. Housing New Zealand tenants across the country benefited from improved insulation and heating. Their homes were damp-proofed with new bathrooms and kitchens. They were fitted as well, and other vital improvements carried out. Improvements which enhanced tenants' living conditions, making their homes warmer, healthier and much more safer. And Mr Speaker, can I just say that John Key, the Prime Minister, is not a slum landlord.
Order. 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 There's been no objection. I'm on my feet. That last part of the answer was in response to a question from one of his own colleagues. There's no need for gratuitous comments in response to questions from one's own colleagues. I'm perfectly happy to compare performance of what this government's doing with what previous government might have done. But I'm not going to have patsy questions used to make gratuitous comments. And the Minister has done it on a couple of successive days now, and that's why I'm raising it, because it's not fair. If members opposite are foolish enough to ask political questions, the Minister can give political answers. I've got no problem with that. We've heard a few of them today. But I'm not going to have patsy questions used to make gratuitous comments. No problem with comparing performance, but not gratuitous comments. Point of order, the Honourable David Payne.
Can I thank you for that ruling? You've made that ruling on a number of occasions over the last couple of weeks, and it has been repeatedly ignored by National Party ministers. And
order. Order. I'm on my feet. No, I don't need any further assistance on it. I've made it clear what I intend, and there's no further issue, and it's not going to be assisted. My insisting on ministers not doing that is not going to be insisted if members of the opposition try to take advantage of it.
Point of order, Mr. Speaker.
Point of order, the Honourable Chair.
Quite a separate point of order, sir, but it might go to assist the House. I just want to make it clear that the comments of my colleague with regard to the highway, we don't associate ourselves with those. We know what was used, sir.
Order. The Speaker must not be brought into the debate. Although I sympathise with the member's point of view. But question number 12, Melissa Lee.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My question is